Hoş geldiniz.
Hoş bulduk.
İlk önce şey sormak istiyorum. İlk defa katılan var mı? Buraya ilk defa gelen var mı? 2 gün önce burada bir etkinliğimiz daha vardı. Olfa'nın şeyi biraz araya sıkışmış oldu. Aslında çok kaliteli bir konuşmacı göreceksiniz. Ben şöyle kısaca Salı günü yapılan sunum üzerinden bir geçeyim. Salı günü etkinliğe katılan var mı? Onlara tekrar olacak. Artık kusura bakmayın. Şimdi neler yaptık Mayıs'ta PMI adına, onu biraz hızlıca geçiyorum. Avrupa'da bir etkinliğimiz oldu. Necat Murat konuştu. Necat Murat Erkan bizim başkan yardımcılarımızdan, biliyorsunuzdur. Hızlı geçiyorum. Anadolu yakasında işte Salı günü olan etkinlikten bahsediyoruz. Pardon, bir öncekinden bahsediyoruz. Leman Türkoğlu konuştu. Şeyi biliyorsunuz, hem İstanbul, hem Anadolu yakasında hem Avrupa yakasında etkinlikler yapıyoruz. Ankara'da etkinliğimiz oldu. Orada konuşmacılarımızın sayısı biraz daha fazla. Okunuyor mu bilmiyorum. Emre Pekkan, Özlem Yurdanur ve Ender Özmen konuştu. Bunların konularla ilgili şeyleri YouTube'a yüklüyoruz değil mi Köksal, kayıt olanları, ama henüz neredeyiz?
Yılbaşı gönüllülük değişiminden sonra biraz gecikmeli ama şu anda onlarla ilgili çalışmalar devam ediyor. Yani son birkaç tanesi eksik, geri kalanlar yüklenmeye devam ediyor.
Şu an arkadaşımız çekiyor, daha sonra bu çekilen videoyu YouTube'a koyuyoruz, YouTube kanalından daha sonra seyretmek mümkün oluyor. Bu arada İzmir'de de bir etkinlik gerçekleştirdik. İzmir'de 3 ayda bir etkinlik yapıyoruz. Oradaki gönül sayımız arttıkça biraz daha hızlanacak inşallah. 2 ayda bir, sonra da ayda bire düşmeyi planlıyoruz etkinlik aralığı olarak. Ankara'da üyelik ve gönüllülük toplantımızı yaptık. Bunun fotoğrafı olması lazım. Güzel katılımlı bir toplantıydı. Necat Murat Erkan oradaydı. Dilek ve Mustafa zaten başkan yardımcılarımız Ankara'dalar. Fotoğraflar. Bu arada bir kahvaltı yaptık. Adaya gittik. Kınalı mıydı o adı?
Kınalıada'da.
Kınalıada'da. Kimler vardı burada? Bizden olanlar. Çok keyifliydi. Brunch şeklinde bir kahvaltı yaptık. Daha sonra da 2 tane proje üzerine beyin fırtınası yaptık. Hem eğlendik, hem çalışmış olduk, hem de katılanlar PGA kazanmış oldular. Faydalı bir etkinlikti. Böyle eğlenceli networking ve gibi etkinlikleri daha fazla yapmayı planlıyoruz. Bakalım, organize edebilirsek belki sonbahara doğru da daha büyük bir şey var kafamızda, ama şimdi konuşmak için erken. Bu arada summitimiz, Ankara Summit'i yaptık, bunu biliyorsunuz. İstanbul'daki summit'in her şeyi belli. 14-15 Ekim'de İTÜ Ayazağ'da Süleyman Demirel Kültür Merkezi'nde Sayısal Dünyada Projeler adı altında summitimiz olacak. Arkadaşlar çalışmaya başladılar ama gönüllüye her zaman ihtiyacımız var. Merve'nin iletişim bilgisi var. İsteyen ona ulaşabilir. Summit çalışmalarında her türlü gerçekten desteğe ihtiyacımız var. Bekleriz isteyenleri, çalışmak isteyenleri. Bizlerin de birer gönüllü olduğumuzu hatırlatmak isterim. Hepimiz işlerimizde, gücümüzde çalışıyoruz ama bir taraftan da PMI'ye gönüllü olarak katılarak proje üretiminin farkındalığını arttırmaya çalışıyoruz bir şekilde. Dergimiz çıkıyor, web sitesinden indirilebiliyor. Göstermişler. İkinci sayımızda çıkmak üzere, biz artık onu gördük, şimdi baskıya verdik. Çok yakında da ikinci sayımızda internetten erişilebilir olacak. Sosyal medya bilgilerimiz zaten biliyorsunuz, bizi tanıyanlar. Evet, benim sunumum bu kadar. Ben şey sormak istiyorum, yeni katılan arkadaşlar PMI hakkında bir şeyler biliyorlar mı? Sertifikanız var mı? Var. PMI Türkiye üyesi misiniz? Üye olmayan var mı? PMI Global'e üye olan var mı? Efendim?
Hem global hem de
güzel. Sizleri de üye yapsak o konuda.
Konuyu yurt
yurt dışına vereceğim, size vermeyi tercih ediyorum. Yani ödeyip giriyorum. Yurt dışına gideceğim, PMI Türkiye gitsin para değil.
Ya şimdi o hepimizin başındaki bir problem. Hani Türkiye'ye sadece üye olmak olmuyor. İlk önce globale üye olunuyor, sonra oradan buraya geliniyor. Yani ama bir şekilde bu organizasyonu, şimdi biz burada PMI'nin brandini kullanıyoruz. Doğru mu? PMI'nin arkamızdaki gücü bizi çok ileriye getiriyor aslında. Yani mesela İP'de bizden daha eski ama biz şu an daha da aktif olmaya başladık. Şimdi bunun da bir bedeli var. Bazı kuralları var. PMI Türkiye'yi kullanabilmek için PMI'yi bir şekilde bizim de onlara üye kazandırıyor olmamız.
Franchise hakkını vermen gerekiyor.
Ya franchise hakkı değil aslında. Yani PMI yapan bu. PMI'nin bütün ülkelerde chapter'ları var. Yani sayısını şu an bilmiyorum ama 300'e yakın chapter'ı var. Amerika'da çok büyük zaten. Dünyada da, Fransa'da, Hollanda'da her yerde var. Şimdi bu büyüklüğü bu hale gelmesinde bu sistemin rolü var. Tabii bizim için satın alma gücü, Türkiye'nin satın alma gücünü düşündüğümüzde 150 dolar büyük bir para. Ama hani şu an burada biz PMI TR diyebiliyorsak bu sistem yüzünden diyebiliyoruz. Hani böyle biraz dışarıdan bakmak lazım. Her neyse biz teşvik ediyoruz PMI Türkiye üyeliğini. Şey için de çok savaşıyoruz. Yani PMI'de biz toplantılara katılıyoruz. Barcelona'da LİN toplantısına katıldık. Orada üst yönetime, yani PMI'nin üst yönetimine devamlı bu ücretin çok fazla olduğunu, bunun azaltılması gerektiğini, azaltamıyorlarsa 2-3 sene, 4 senedir, 5 senedir üye olan insanlardan daha indirimli alınması gerektiği gibi şeyleri zaten bütün chapter'lar, bir tek biz değil, dünyadaki bütün chapter'lar bunu söylüyorlar. Yani bu en böyle hararetli tartışma konularından biri. Ama bir şekilde 600 bine yakın sertifika veren bir kuruluş var. Bir o kadar yayını var. Dolaşımda milyonlarca pin bakı var. Yani fiziksel pin baktan bahsediyorum. Hani bunların herhalde bir gideri var ki bunu indiremiyorlar. Artık biz de onu dedik. Çünkü ben 2009'dan beri bu organizasyonun içindeyim. Bu arada kendimi tanıtmayı unuttum. Ben İsmail Kurtoğlu, kusura bakmayın. Bu sene PMI'nin başkanıyım. Bizde başkanlık bir sene. Önümüzdeki sene bir arkadaşa devrediyor olacağım. O da Mustafa Hafızoğlu, PMI TR'nin kurucularının arasından bir arkadaşım. O Ankara'da yaşıyor ama bir sene sonra da o devredecek. 2009'da ben bu organizasyona girdim. 2009'dan beri işte katılıyoruz, ediyoruz. Bu sorunları dile getiriyoruz. Bu alanda bir geri adım atılamadı henüz bir şekilde. Yalnız şeyi duyduk geçen sene, Hindistan'da bir pilot uygulama başlatılmış. Ben çok uzatmıyorum. Your turn, Olfa.
Thank you. I tried to guess what he was saying, but I understood nothing. But I could follow the. What I like there are the photos of the food. Food is great here, so I know that the PMI Turkey chapter provides food, so that's okay. Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining in today. Now, this is my first time in Turkey. It's a shame because I'm Tunisian. I should not wait this long to visit Turkey, but it's never too late, as we say. What I'm going to try to do, maybe give you a little bit of overview about myself, you know, what I do, and then we'll jump into the presentation. The presentation is going to be in English, so please, I get this all the time. If you want me to repeat something, or if you want me to, you know, explain something, or maybe if you think that I don't make sense at all, please let me know. Okay, don't feel ashamed to do that. As I mentioned, I'm originally from Tunisia. I actually was born in a southern city, a mining city called Kafsa, and studied in Tunis. And then I studied in Tunis till the age of maybe 17. At the time, so I'm going to tell you a little bit of the story so that you just get the story. But so at the age of 17, sat for the national exam, the high school exam in Tunis. I was ranked second on the entire nation. And then from there I got a scholarship from the government to study in France. And then I studied in France, engineering, industrial engineering, in one of the École Centrale, some people maybe know. It's engineering school in France. And then from there, got my Master's of Science, worked in construction, construction suburbs of Paris. Then moved to the United States, to Texas, to the Construction Engineering and Project Management program in the University of Texas at Austin. Now, why Texas? It's Texas, you know, I'm sure a lot of you know, there's a lot of oil and gas going on in there, right? And so the best program in the world, actually, specializing in industrial construction management is in Austin and Texas. So I went there, completed my second Master of Science with a thesis on advanced wood packaging that I'm talking about today. Also, in parallel, I completed the law degree at Texas Law School in specializing in arbitration and mediation. Does that sound, you know, arbitration for international disputes between governments and public companies and private companies. And so, as you know, you can imagine, I covered all the bases for projects: the technical side, the management side, and the legal side. Sorry?
Did you study medicine also?
No, no, no medicine, no. But then, you know, for projects, I covered, you know, all the bases. Now, I worked as a researcher. Originally, I'm a researcher. So to pay for my studies in the US, of course, you know, studies in the US are very expensive. And so to pay for my studies, I worked as a researcher in the Construction Industry Institute, CII, not CIA, okay, CII. I worked in the Construction Industry Institute as a researcher. Basically, it's a consortium. So the CII is a consortium of private companies. So I think more than 150 companies. So for example, Shell, ExxonMobil, you know, Chevron, these construction, oil and gas owner and contracting companies, they come together, they become members of a consortium. This consortium basically defines each year a set of research themes, so problems in the industry that we'd like to solve. And then on each team and on each problem, a group of professionals from those companies plus an academic, it was me basically, and also professors from the University of Texas at Austin, and then we tried to solve that problem over 2 years. So advanced wood packaging came out as a proposed solution to a problem in the industrial construction sector. So industrial construction is basically construction projects in the industrial sector, so oil and gas, mining, chemical sector, you know, all those refineries. I don't know if you have, you know, an idea about that, but that's the kind of the field where it started. And then from there, I continued as a researcher and a consultant on project risk, basically. So what I do, you give me your project, large mega projects. So I've worked on projects from $10 million to over $1 billion. So projects of all sizes. I look at the project, study the data, cost, schedule, safety, procurement, planning, you know, contracts, everything. And then I come up with the list of the risks that will jeopardize the project and how to minimize those risks. That's my work, basically. So now, why, some people ask me, I'm going to start here eventually by putting my presentation. One second, please. This one.
tratado donde está.
Okay. Yes, it is. So some people asked me, basically, they said, why did you come to Turkey? Because they thought I'm on business here and then I'm stopping by the PMI chapter. And I said, no, I just came for the PMI chapter. Came in yesterday night, traveling back tomorrow morning. And the reason for that is this man. Who can recognize this man? You can, right? Right? I don't know how to pronounce this. Who can anybody read this one? This here?
Hayrettin.
Tunuslu Hayrettin Paşa.
Okay, that's how. In Arabic, Hayrettin Paşa. Okay. This man is the reason I'm here today, and why I chose, to come here. Now, for those who don't know this person, so he lived in the 19th century. He's Turkish-Tunisian, and he's one of the biggest reformers of the Tunisian administration. At the time, he became vizier of the Tunisia. I mean, Tunisia, of course, at some point was part of the Ottoman Empire, and he was responsible for Tunisia, basically. And then at the time, he wanted to reform so much Tunisia that he lost his job, And so, how did he do that? He started poor, got a good education, then rose through the military ranks, and then became general, then became Minister of Finance, and held many other positions, and then became the governor of Tunisia at the time. Now, he wrote a book, it's called أقوم الممالك في معرفة الممالك. So basically, it's his book, The Shortest Path to Knowledge of the State of Countries. So what he did at the time, he traveled all over Europe, and of course he knows very well the Ottoman Empire and the administration, the Ottoman administration, and he wrote a book as a comparison. At the time, the European countries were getting into industrialization, right, and then the Ottoman Empire was going down. And so this guy wrote a book saying, this is why we're going down, and this is what we should do. And his book, of course, in Tunisian culture and studies and administration is somehow a pillar of the school of thought. Now, why am I mentioning him? It's because at the time when he wrote the book, he was talking about the administration of how European countries succeeded in getting the resources from underground and succeeded into revolutionizing their industry. In modern terms, the equivalent of that is management. We call it today management, but actually it's very old. And he started that. So, because I know that what this guy has been doing, and because of my belief that projects are the engine of the economy, tell me how a country does its projects, I'll tell you how developed that country is. Right? So, that is why I chose to come here, because if I know something and it can benefit you, that my goal is achieved. Okay? So my talking points today, what I want to do is talk about the construction industry in general. What is its biggest dilemma? It's productivity. We have a problem in productivity in the construction industry in comparison to IT, manufacturing, automobile industry. Construction has a huge productivity gap. Then talk about what does it mean to successfully deliver a construction project, an industrial construction project, of course. And then with that, part of that is what does it mean to do proper constructability reviews? And why am I mentioning all these? Because these are components of the advanced work packaging system. If you don't do these things well, it doesn't matter if you apply advanced work packaging. It's like when you buy software. You can buy the best software ever. If you don't have the proper system in place, right? The software won't bring return on investment, right? And there is something that it's somehow a sentence used. It says garbage in, garbage out. So basically, a software, it can be great, but if you insert anything in the software, it's going to produce results. It's going to always have something. But if you put garbage, you're going to receive garbage. If you put good information, then you receive good information. And so the idea is to present all those elements that are important for the advanced work packaging system to work. And then I'd like to end with the part on how to move basically from project management to project leadership, which I think is one of the skills that we need to make this, breakthrough in the industry. Is this now up to now? Do you guys follow? Okay, that's good. Okay, so this is a very famous graph. I don't know how many people are familiar with this. No one? Okay. So this one basically compares productivity in here. This is all the productivity in the United States over the years, right? And this is combined productivity in all sectors that are not farming. So we take out farming projects and then the rest of the industry. And this is the construction industry productivity. So what we see in here is that while the productivity in all other sectors improved significantly, and obviously the reason for that is, the introduction of technology, the use of certain management concepts like the lean concept for the automobile industry, right? Toyota and all the lean concept. So that in a way improved productivity so much on a lot of the sectors, including manufacturing. So automation, use of robots, etc. What we can see is the construction industry productivity, it's stagnating or it's even going down actually, right? And that's a problem. It's a problem right there. Now, the thing is, a study was done by the Boston Consulting Group that showed that a % increase in productivity in the construction industry is worth $7 billion. And so, when we think about it, anything that can improve productivity, that's money on the table, right? I know, like, coming from the US, I seem like, okay, she's talking money, like, oh, capitalist talking money, but the truth is that's the bottom line, right? You invest something, you invest money in a project, you want to have return. So if your productivity is going down, then you're losing money. So why is that? Why does the construction industry, why is it so different from the other sectors? Now, one thing is construction projects in general, okay, that it's not only roads and buildings, it's the whole construction industry. So, capital projects in the chemical sector, in the oil and gas sector, all sectors included. So, it has still remained a labor-intensive business. When you take a plant and you want to manufacture a car, you can almost be replaced human beings by robots, right? The problem in the construction industry is that we have not succeeded in replacing human beings by robots in the construction field. Because every field is different. There are a lot of things, variables basically, and it's still a labor-intensive business. And technical complexity is going up. And I'll talk later about a project that's one of the most complex technical projects in history. We're doing construction projects in remote areas more and more, right? Now with all the resources that we dig underground, oil and around the cities, now to get some more oil, we need to go deep in the desert or up in Siberia or Alaska. So projects are even more remote. Also, in a lot of the construction industry projects, we're doing a lot of revamp. So buildings are getting old, plants are getting old, so we need to replace things. That's construction. And so we're doing work while other things are operating. Much more regulatory requirements. I've worked on a project in Turkey. It's a gold mine near, somehow, okay, I can't remember the name exactly of the area, but we had to relocate an entire village to get under the mine because they were living on top of the mine. Now, relocating an entire village, that's going to require a lot of work with the community, right? A lot of approval from the government, so what we call social and environmental studies. So all these, we may forget about them, but these are aspects that impact construction projects. They somehow they're a big component of the construction project. Similarly, the truth is, skilled labor are no longer available. And not only that, the new generation, my generation, we no longer want to work in construction fields, right? Go to, I mean, it's the problem, I'm sure it's the same here. You know, you prefer going to the cafe than go and work at the construction site. It's a fact. And the job is no longer attractive to the labor. And so, and there is a shortage in skilled labor, not enough training worldwide for construction labor. Additionally, projects when they happen, they're in different countries, right? And then these projects are impacted by the political risk, right? Now, political risks for projects, there is insurance for that. Now they're becoming more and more difficult and costly to insure. And that, in a way, impacts the reliability and then the profitability of the project. Now, all those things are factors that make construction projects very hard to succeed. The most important one, well, an important factor is the change of the commodity prices. Of course, when the price of oil and gas goes down, then it may be not profitable to do oil and gas projects anymore. But you know, oil and gas projects, they take years to define and then to develop. And so you've already spent 2 or 3 years on a certain project, and then along the way, in a couple months, prices went down, and you're still spending money on that project. You know what happens? In a way, you have a problem with your shareholders, you know, and then you're thinking about shelving the project, so let's put it in the shelf, we'll come back later. And then when you pick up a project later, what does it happen? People are gone, no one understands what was defined, and you lose information. So all of these things happen and make construction projects hard. Now, an important aspect to making construction projects successful, which is now becoming more, let's say, it's more up-to-date or more a more important factor that is being considered than before. It's the relationship between the business and the project people. So, in a way, business people are the people who give the money to get the project done, right? Now, business comes and say, okay, you do this project to me, for it to be profitable, I want it delivered by next year. But you guys, the project people, say, it's impossible, right? I can't just do it. And so what happens is that projects get sanctioned, they're not ready, they're not well defined, and then they get into execution. You go into the field, you start construction, and you realize that you need more money. Then you go back to business, and business says, oh my God, this project is a mess. So this whole thing, relationship between business and project people, is very critical. Now, more than ever, especially with oil prices that are going down, business and project people have the same interest somehow. They're getting more aligned. Now let's look at this project. Can you recognize this project? is the Gorgon project. Does anybody know?
Australia.
It's in Australia, yes. The Gorgon project in Australia, this is one of the largest projects of the century, right? It's a a mega project. It's a joint venture between Shell, ExxonMobil, and Chevron. Now, this joint venture, this project, it's a project that lasts, on such large projects, the duration is really big, right? Going over years. When oil prices changed, so what does typically happen, you know? Eventually, so when you're on a project and then oil prices go down, what is the first thing you think of, you know, regarding the project? You no longer have enough resources, so what you're going to do is two things. Either go to your suppliers and tell them, lower your prices, right? That's the first way. And the second way, you're going to try to work more efficiently to spend less money, right? Now, why isn't it, so going to your suppliers to lower the prices is not a sustainable way. And the reason for that is, as soon as oil prices pick up again, they're going to make their prices high, right, again, and they'll get back on you, actually. You know, they're going to make them even higher because they know next time you're going to ask them to lower the prices again. So it's not sustainable to somehow work on just the supply chain prices to lower your prices for a project. The most sustainable and effective way is to know how to work better and not lose money into inefficiencies and know how to manage well your projects. So in a way, that in a way is summarized into doing the right projects and doing projects right. So doing the right project is basically doing a project that is economically and from a business perspective is a profitable project. So it's a good case to invest in. And then doing projects right is taking that case, the business case, and translating it into a project that is a successful project. So the rest of the presentation is somehow more on the doing the project right, not doing the right project. I hope, you know, we can talk about that in other times, but it's about doing the project right. Now, let me ask you, you know, a quick question. What is a successful project?
Depends on customer. Depends on customer.
Customer satisfaction. Okay.
Depends on customer. If the customer's satisfaction is regarding time, and if you finish the project in deadlines, you will be successful. Or if the customer perspective will cost related, and if you are in the cost baseline, maybe you will be successful. So I'm saying that it is a customer perspective.
Of course, this perspective comes from a contractor talking to the customer. Now, the owner of the project, what would be a successful project for an owner, for example?
On time.
Classical answer is on time, on budget, on quality. But the newly thinkable thing is the project life cycle, and whether all stakeholders are happy or not.
Or not, okay. That's, of course, that's the right answer. Now, in the construction industry, a successful project, theoretically, of course, is a project on budget, okay, on time, operable. So at the end of the day, you turn on the machine or the process, then it works, okay, and it's safe. Of course, there is the safety aspect, which is the #1 project outcome for construction. You know, construction is one of the deadliest industries in the world, right? People die in construction fields, and safety is really, really important to obviously eliminate fatalities and reduce the number of accidents. So when we look at those, these are the project outcomes, cost, schedule, safety, operability, and of course, once those somehow are achieved, this would contribute to a economic case that's profitable. Okay, now, considering a large database of projects in the industrial sector, what would be, based on your opinion, an approximate percentage of projects that are successful? So, and by this definition, they're on cost, they're on budget, on time, they are safe, and they work as expected. What would be the percentage? 20%? Okay. 40, 45%? 0%? Are you from the construction field? No, you're not. Any other thoughts? 5%. Well, you know what? It's 5%. Believe it or not. It's close to 5%. The truth is, it's very hard on a big construction project to be successful on all those outcomes. So what happens there, the next question that comes is, the question then becomes, what are the trade-offs between all those outcomes? And that's what makes certain projects successful versus not. You can be over budget, but because you know that schedule is more important than cost, then you made the trade-off of paying more to be on time. So the question of trade-offs, that's what comes to the, it's one of the critical elements to deliver profitable projects, is these outcomes, basically, the trade-offs between all those, which is typically a decision that's not only a project team decision, it's also a business decision, because at the end of the day, business is the one who's going to decide, okay, I'll pay more to go faster, or no, I don't care when you finish, I'm not paying any more. So the trade-offs, that's a critical element of, the outcomes related to capital projects. Now, to get there, and this is a way of thinking, is to think with the end in mind. So before I start the project, I start thinking of the end. The end is, how do I want this project to end, basically. So that's why I presented the outcomes first, because keeping in mind the outcomes is what makes a project successful. Actually, I'm going to put it the other way. On many projects that I've seen, and the project management for capital projects literature is full of this, research, projects, one of the main reasons and the main causes projects fail is because the outcomes are not defined from the beginning. So the stakeholders, the client, the owner, the contractors, the vendors, they're not aligned on the priorities, what's more important, So let's take the example of safety, for example, which is a very classical example. If safety is not, the construction sites that has the biggest accidents, and the industries that do have the worst accidents are those sites where the owner of the project is not the one telling everybody and enforcing the idea that safety is a priority. So, and obviously, I'm sure you guys can understand that in a way is extrapolated on geographical areas, right? I'm going to take the example of Tunisia, for example. On one of the sites that do have a lot of the deadliest sites where fatalities happen are construction-related sites that are related to all the either telecommunication or electricity installations, because people work at elevated areas, and accidents happen, and then people die. And so, at some point, employees of the national company in Tunisia, they said, okay, we're fed up with the situation, we don't want to die anymore, okay, please do something about it. This is very dangerous. And so what happened at the time is that the union, which speaks on behalf of the employees working there, they negotiated with the company leadership families that lost their people in those construction sites. And so the terms that were negotiated is basically, okay, to improve the situation, we're going to hire the sons and daughters of the people that died to work in the same construction site. That was more important to them as a compensation than to improve the conditions that led to the problem. Now this is also a cultural perspective. So I talk about safety here because I don't care if a project is on time, on budget, you know, and works, but then somebody died. That's not a successful project. So safety is really important. Let's take the example of the United States. Construction safety rate in the industry has improved over the years. Of course, it's still dangerous. It's not zero accidents. It's still, you know, the problem. But then older companies that implemented a zero accident strategy, which is a set of practices, best practices on, for example, applying disciplinary action in the field for people who do not respect safety recommendations. For example, not giving financial incentives to contractors to improve safety, but actually putting that money into actual safety supervisors and recognizing people that do safe work, these kind of things. These companies together, when they implemented a zero safety plan, zero accident plan, they improved their safety record dramatically in comparison to the rest of the industry. So, also, as a result, by implementing that, their cost effectiveness improved as well. So, to get those project outcomes out there, one needs what we call critical conditions. The critical conditions for success are composed of, for a construction project, obviously you need to have the right business case. You define your scope. You guys are all familiar with that. And you define your project objectives in terms of cost, schedule, etc. But then what you need to do is you have to have contracting strategies that are in line with the stakeholders' capabilities. What does that mean? So for example, you're executing a construction project in a new country. And this is the largest project ever in that region. Of course, if you want to employ local contractors, you cannot expect local contractors to be effective on such a large project because they don't have the experience on such a large project. So your contracting strategy has to follow the capabilities of the companies that are around that area. You know, in a way, one of the other, you know, aspects is basically the constructability strategy. Who's familiar in the room with what the constructability strategy is? So constructability strategy is basically imagining how you will physically build the project beforehand and planning for it. So for example, big cranes on a large project, when you have very large cranes, you need to plan how you're going to get them on site and how you're going to remove them on site and the relationship of that with all the other work packages beforehand. I've seen actually a project where they did not plan well the cranes for the site, and then they ended up with a contractor finishing a work on certain part of the scope, the other one finishing the other work on certain part of the scope, the crane taking care of things, but then they could not remove the crane. Everything was built around. I mean, you think that's a stupid mistake to make, but the truth is it's not. If you don't plan your constructability strategy, how you're going to get the material on site, how you're going to build, how you're going to remove the material, where you're going to put your camps, and these kind of things, which equipment comes first, and these kind of sequencing, then you may end up with an issue. And so, of course, this one is the project management capabilities. This basically covers everything that PMI talks about. You know, change management, scope management, human resources management, project controls, your basically the definition practices. I mean, all those areas, knowledge areas, right, and capabilities. These are all included into one box. You add to that a good contractor strategy and a constructability strategy. And of course, once you execute the project, it's not enough to well define the project. The other part of it is during execution, you need to follow what's happening, right? It's like when you want to raise a child, you know. It's not enough to just give birth to a child. You need to raise the child and follow him, right? Follow him in school or her, you know, follow them after. What are the friends, basically? Is he with good friends or bad friends? Good company, bad company? That kind of supervision is the same thing for a project. You can define what a project, but then if you let it go, like, you know, especially on a lump sum contracting strategy, typically you define a project, then you give it to a construction company, and then, okay, go ahead and make the construction. Well, that's not the recipe for success. You still need, even with the lump sum contracting strategy, you still need a certain level of supervision in the field. So supervision of the labor, supervision of the engineering quality and timeliness, so all the drawings and all the engineering deliverables, and then supervision of all the procurement, your vendors, you know. So I wanted to cite this. This is one of the very first construction sites I worked in. It was in France. So this is an underground parking level. One of also the smallest construction site I've ever worked with. And so we're like 3 levels underground, and we're trying to build this water retention tank, basically, or area. We want to put water in there. And so on this construction site, I came in, the project manager left, and then I came in at later stages. They were already, this was like 2 months after I came in. And so, by the way, 80% of the labor in that construction site were Turkish people. The rest are Portuguese. And when I came in as a project manager, no one wanted to talk to me in French. I don't speak Turkish, I speak Portuguese, and I'm there. I came right out, out of school, and I'm a woman project manager in a construction site with Turkish and Portuguese guys, and they're all old, but some of them are young. They didn't want to talk to me, And so when I arrived there, and we were trying to do this, the project was already late, over budget, accidents happening, all the time. And I'm like, I thought I could be a savior, a hero, and save the project. But I couldn't, actually. And so one of the engine driver here, he's an old Turkish guy. And he, somehow I'm grateful to him because he helped me in a way. He gave me advice, such as, for example, when you come into the morning for the meeting, don't just boss around these men and tell them what to do. Just say good morning and then ask them, okay, what can we do today? And just play low profile. That's, he kind of like gave me those tips to keep going on that construction site. And so he told me there is like this proverb, and I don't know if that's true. Actually, you guys can now tell me years after that. Is that something famous here? It is, right? Okay. Anyway, so he was telling me, look, this project, as we say in Turkey, in his words, well begun is half done. This project was not well begun in the beginning. You're not gonna just let it go. Just try to manage it, finish, and cool down. Just be cool. And so I, in a way, years after that, when I was trying to got into the research and project management and formal research and collecting data and writing all that, I realized that on a project, on a construction project, we spend over 2/3 of the time dealing with information before we even start doing anything in the site. Before you start the first foundation, you spend months and months just dealing with information. All about the construction site, the people, the vendors, the equipment, the tools, everything. And then you just, in a few months, all that information has to become a building and has to become a site, you know. And so the key is to try to understand and know how to manage well that 2/3 of the time, you know, that information. And traditionally, we don't do that well in projects, in construction, because we always think that the project starts when we go into construction. So, in a way, well begun is half done. So my job, as I see it now, is to make sure that projects start well. That's all I do. Then you guys go ahead and finish the rest. So I'm no longer that person that comes at the end and tries to save the project, because now I know that project that go wrong cannot be saved. Anyway, so I think I'm going to jump into this section, which is the constructability review session, unless you guys want me to go through that, but we can go back to that later. And so going back to this framework that in a way summarizes what's a good project. So all these elements, the critical, I mean, all those things, this is, as you can see, I'm not talking here about, you know, concrete or equipment, or I'm all talking about information, as you can see here, right? A contract is information. Project management tools and methods, it's information. Strategies are information. Following progress, that's information. So all I'm talking about here is information. And then the critical element for that is how timely is that information? I mean, you can have the best information, but if you don't bring it to me on time, it's not important to me. You know, thank you for telling me so late. You know? I need it on time to be able to make the right decision. And I need a good information. If you give me something wrong and I base my decision on it, then I'm going to end up, you know, failing because of that bad information of bad quality. And so that's what I call somehow the mortar concept. So the idea is, looking at the construction wall, you know, there are all those bricks that do represent all the elements that I mentioned, right? And then what's missing and what we do not do well in construction, and that's, you guys, IT people can help construction people with this, is to develop this, the mortar, is what connects everything. What makes the information come on time, and it's reliable, and it's, you know, true, basically. So to put that in terms, the mortar concept, as it is seen from a construction perspective, is composed of two major systems. So we're talking about a project decision support system, okay? And this has to deal with the decision sides, the decision-making of the stakeholders within the life cycle of a project. And then the second part is the project information flow protocol, which is basically all those stakeholders making decisions, they need to understand each other. Now, one of the major issues we have in the construction field is that every company has its own terminology, and every company has its own way of calling things. Sometimes a risk register, you know, in a company is different from the other one. A change log in one company is completely different from another change log in another company. Sometimes within the same companies, projects, they don't use the same, you know, templates. Let's call them templates. So the idea is to, similarly, you know, to the design information, you know, obviously of the 3D design information. For when it comes to project management information, we need a project information flow protocol. And so the advanced work packaging system is an example of a framework that covers both the project decision support system and the project information flow protocol. So when we look at the project decision support system, components of this include the gating system. So the gating system is basically, I think, I'm sure it's the same for IT projects, but for construction projects, There are formal gates that the project has to go through, right? So a first level of definition, then you go through a committee basically that examines the project and then says, okay, I'm going to give you funding for this project, go ahead and start execution. And so the gates that one project goes through are part of the project decision support system. Now, one of the challenges related to this the gating system is for a committee that has hundreds of projects that come through that committee. How do they make the decision about this project? Is it ready to go or it's not? So that readiness is one of the aspects. The other side of the aspect is the financial and contracting decisions related to the project, and then the assurance process. On the project information flow protocol, components include, I'm sure IT guys are familiar with this, so workflow, the structure, the deliverables, the metrics and indicators, project community, and then the time aspect. Now, on the AWP system, what I'm going to try to present is the structure and the deliverables. And then I'll get into the future of those, but otherwise it's going to be a very long presentation, which is already, somehow, long. So what's AWP? As I mentioned in my introduction, the AWP, this is one of the 3-volume books that detail what's the AWP system. It's an industry implementation process. It was a result of a joint venture between the Construction Industry Institute, and I was a member of that, and the Construction Owners Association of Alberta in Canada. So a lot of oil and gas projects in there. They cost a lot of money, so they were of the people that started looking at how to reduce the cost of construction projects. So this one is basically the industry implementation. My thesis was the first academic publication on the subject, published by the University of Texas at Austin. And obviously since then there has been the implementation case studies and a lot of things. Now I took this to another level, so when I started on this, only a handful of people knew about it. So one of my goals was to take this idea, and this start of process and put it out there to as many people as possible, because I'm sure there are people out there that can recognize what it is and they can bring in information, and then we can move faster. So the AWP system, it's a project delivery system that emphasizes construction as a primary planning driver. So what does that mean? It means that from day one, you're going to do the project. All your planning and all your cost estimating and all your design and all your definition and everything you do in the definition phase is driven by the construction side. Now let me tell you what is eventually, and that would give you a better idea about why is this seems like it's not new, right? But the truth is, this is very different from what is being done today in the construction industry. So when you go to an engineering company, let's say, eventually, a large engineering company in the construction sector, maybe in Turkey here, are there any big engineering? Okay. So you get into an engineering company, you tell them, okay guys, how do you start designing a construction project? Then they're going to think in terms of systems, right? Well, they're going to think there is the foundation, the piping system, the mechanical side. They're going to think in terms of discipline. Piping, mechanical, structural, right? Design, in terms of discipline. Okay. Now you go to the construction people and you ask them, how do you think of the construction project? How do you design the construction project? Then they're going to tell you, okay, I start there, then I move there, then I move there. They think geographically. Construction people think geographically, engineering think systems. And then procurement people, they think in terms of pieces of equipment. He doesn't care which comes first, right? He thinks this piece and this piece and I'm going to do them in my own shop, and that's the plan, basically. So all of those together, so on a large project, on a mega project, with hundreds and hundreds of pieces of equipment and thousands of pipes from all sizes and all, shapes and structures and foundation. Imagine all of those together with 5, 6 engineering companies, 2 or 3 construction companies, tens of subcontractors. How to align all that? It can easily become a mess. And so one of the major issues that make construction projects expensive is that when we get into the field, we take the design that was delivered by the engineering company and realize, okay, this pipe ends here and this pipe comes here, okay, they're not aligned. Right? And then, okay, they're not aligned. Take this design back to the office and make it a change. And that's rework. And rework thousands of times, that's inefficiencies, that's money lost. And so what happens is, through the AWP system, companies that choose to apply AWP, what they say is that from day one I'm going to start, I'm going to bring the construction people that I typically hire only at the end, months after I do the design. No, I'm going to bring them very early, and I'm going to make them define the packages, and then the engineering is going to only feed those packages. So it's not the discipline that drives the planning, it's the construction that drives the planning. And so, for example, an example, so the AWP system is, the structure is based on work packages. Now, the key terms are, so there are construction work packages, CWPs, engineering work packages, EWPs, and installation work packages, IWPs. What happens is that, let's take this project for example, right? As you can see this one, to plan that in terms of construction packages, you would define a construction work package by area, for example, like this case, that is somehow we try to get it as independent as possible from the rest of the plant. And then within this construction work package, every discipline is an engineering work package. So for example here piping, that's an EWP. And then within an engineering work package, this one is a subsystem, that's an IWP. And this one, the rule is it's worth, somehow we try to get it to worth a week of work. Not more, because then it becomes large. So as you can see here, on a complex large projects like this, by dividing it this way, I am more in control of the packages and then of my planning. And then when I go to the engineering office, I don't need them somehow to understand what I'm doing in the field. I just send them a list of engineering work packages that they don't make sense to them somehow, but in a way they fit into a construction work package, right? So this hierarchy, in a way, can be summarized as basically to bring the field to the office. So in a way, in a project, what becomes the first document you start, in a way, and that's a document that you keep throughout the entire project, is your PEP, the Project Execution Plan. Typically now in construction projects, your PEP is not your #1 priorities to define. You define your estimate, you define your scope, you start doing your preliminary design to get your bids out, the PEP comes at the end. For projects that do lump sum construction, so lump sum is basically when you give an entire package to a construction company with a fixed amount and say you do everything with that amount. On a lump sum package, typically owner companies, they don't define the PEP. The PEP is typically very weak, you know. So with the AWP, PEP becomes, the project execution plan becomes a primary deliverable rather than what's being done now. Obviously the focus is on work packages, and then the structure becomes the skeleton of the project, and then in addition to having a typical planner, then you would have a work package planner, and that guy, all he does is basically make sure that those packages are on time, and those packages are delivered, they are complete with the right information. Now, one of the major benefits of such system is it's very simple. So it's very simple to understand. CWP, EWP, IWP. So it is quickly in the US and many other countries actually, but mostly in the US and Canada, it has quickly become it's becoming a standard. So actually it is now a recognized best practice, and I'll get into that in a moment. So by implementing this structure on those large projects, benefits included, and as I mentioned earlier, a percent increase in productivity in the industry is a $7 billion. So benefits on construction projects of the implementation of the AWP system included an increase in productivity in the field productivity of 15% on some projects. On certain chemical projects, we've seen cost reduction close to 20%, what typically is done. So in a way, and this is my personal opinion, and through experience, I think there has been so much mess in the construction industry that we just needed to organize it a little bit to start seeing benefits, And so if we look at those packages, what does a construction work package include? I showed you the boundaries, but then what does it include? The content, it includes obviously the description of your scope, and then the constructability strategy, how to construct in a general manner, your safety requirements, the various engineering work packages, the schedule requirements, your budget, the quality requirements, and any special resources. So in a way, a construction work package is like a project by itself. It's a sub-project. And this one, of course, has to be, some companies, they use this to organize their bidding process. And one of its features has to be as independent as possible. So the interface between the packages need to be minimal. An engineering work package includes your scope of work and then the equipment list, because that's an important aspect of the project, your drawings, the vendor data, any other information needed, such as, for example, permitting studies or geotechnical studies. Geotechnical studies are studies that enable the understanding of the soil. And then your connection points to the other engineering work packages. Your installation work package, which is the smallest unit that is being installed, this one contains your scope of work, your safety requirements, quality, QA/QC requirements, your material takeoffs, screenshots, for example, of the 3D model, the scaffolding requirements, and any other, obviously, requirements to install the thing. Now, the IWP, the list of IWPs, there is an entire formal process through which an IWP is approved to go into the field. So an IWP has to get into the field when all those are defined and approved, of course, and then it has very minimal constraints. I don't know if some people of you here are familiar with the lean construction concept. So the lean construction concept is basically the lean manufacturing concept applied to the construction field. And so the way the lean construction functions is that we don't want to start work we want to start work only when constraints are zero, basically. No constraints at all. It's constraint-free package. Now the IWP difference, one of the differences is that the package, if it is approved by the superintendent and then by the construction manager to go into the field, that's fine, even if some constraints are there. And so overall, to explain this overall, when you look at the last stage, which is the construction stage here, right? The last stage is basically when you have your IWPs, the installation work package, those small packages worth a week of work, all those packages developed and being executed, and then you start to commission your project. To get to this, one needs to go through the detailed design stage and then to the preliminary planning and design stage. The detailed design stage is a stage that enables you to develop your engineering work packages. But then before you get there, you define your engineering work packages in relationship to your construction work packages that do happen there. So at the end of the definition, before I start detailed design, through the AWP system, I know my construction work packages and I know my engineering work packages, and then I start developing them. So this is all about control, execution, and control. No definition happens in those phases. So this is an example of one of the data we collected on projects in actually COA data, so Western Canada. So traditional projects, when we look at we try to measure productivity of the labor in the field, they spend 37% of their time using tools. The rest, 63%, is either spent waiting or traveling or taking breaks. A worker in the construction site, productivity is not high. Through the implementation of the AWP system, on average, there has been an increase of 25% in tool time. This is, it's like you have an engineer in front of a computer, and you think out of 8 hours a day, he's just spending 37% of that just computing. The rest of it, he's waiting for information, or he's traveling between offices. Do you accept that? No, right? Well, in the construction side, that's the reality. So this is a major improvement in the Now, the AWP system implemented by major companies, and that includes, maybe to cite few actually, it includes all the member companies that actually developed this. So from Shell to, Southern Company, many companies, those who implement it well, for them, it's a competitive advantage. It's similar to having access to an area where you have exclusivity for a certain, to exploit certain resources. So it is a competitive advantage. Now, it is a competitive advantage, of course, and the hope is not to keep it a competitive advantage, but to make it an industry standard so that we move forward as a whole, as an industry. And so to implement this, and this is like the highest level of implementation, and I'm not going to get into the details, but in a way, the implementation of the advanced work packaging system has to come in a way from a buy-in from the top. So the top people has to somehow understand and believe and commit to wanting to improve capital performance. So anyway, to summarize this, we do well the bricks, if you have your PMP license, you know well how to do change management, and you know well how to do controls, and you know well how to develop your charter, and all the basics of project management. But then you get into a project, and the question becomes, did you do those well? So what's the quality? What's the information there? And did you manage them well? And that's what we need to do. The AWP at this stage, now I'm speaking as of June 2016. So it is still a strong experience-based model. So what I've been presenting and what's included, it's obviously as any system when it starts, it's based on case studies. We apply it, we implement it, we document the case studies, and we try to have systematic data. So we're still at the very early stages of the development. The theoretical validation is still pending, of course, and this is up to the academics to So if there are any professors here or any people sponsoring research in universities, one of the, the things, the projects to do is try to understand the theoretical validation of the AWP, maybe in comparison to what's being done on IT projects, for example. The aim is to develop an industry-wide protocol. So this starts with information mapping first, but it has to, to be carried through AWP, through parallel efforts. Now, the AWP system requires further design. We need more detail. So it's still a human-powered decision-making system. There are people out there selling software related to AWP, saying this is an AWP software. The truth is there is no dedicated AWP software. It's pure marketing somehow. We're not there yet. We need more information and more mapping and more people using this to be able to come up with a system like this. And so to get from, to get to automation in a way, and this is my, my thought, is to bring in the best talent from the IT sector to the construction industry. So going from project management to project leadership, this started with, with an initiative done by the Advanced Work Packaging Institute, which I was the founder of, and it's based in San Francisco. If you guys happen to visit, please shoot me an email. You have my card in there. And so the AWP Institute, when I started this, my goal was to make people all over the world just know that AWP exists and that it is used in industrial construction projects, and that if they want to implement it and apply it, that's for the benefit of everybody, for the company itself, but also for the industry. And that's how we move forward. So my goal by instituting the institute, the AWP Institute, is to take this knowledge and build the global momentum. Actually, yesterday, I was surprised, but it seems like there's some people, PhD students in Russia, that are trying with their professors to work with companies to implement AWP and then document the benefits and see how it goes in the Russian context. They contacted me to, co-advise some of those researches, but for me, I'm always happy to see that more people are getting interested into this topic. So I'm sure you're all familiar that, for example, for the financial industry, right? They talk the same language, right? Transactions happen all over the world in a standardized manner. Transactions happen every day. I receive SWIFTs every day, and it's, in a way, it's standardized. I'm sure in the telecommunication, I'm sure you guys have standards that, I don't know, on the projects, but then for sure on certain equipment, etc., they're somehow standard. Now, why not have a standardized communication system for capital projects? If banks could do it, why not construction companies? And so the idea is to develop the Society for Worldwide Interorganizational Project Exchange, the SWIPE. It's easy to remember. And so it's a global industry initiative from the Advanced Work Packaging Institute. And it has a certain pillars. First of all is to build the global momentum on AWP. Okay, so the more people know about this, the more they have interest about this, the better it is. Ensure continuous education is happening, because, I don't think that I should just teach AWP. It has to get into an entire context. People need, if you're an IT professional and you want to get into the capital projects industry for big construction projects, there is a certain introduction that needs to happen, which is understanding the context, how projects are being executed traditionally. What are the methods? What's the language spoken in the construction industry? And so one of the goals is to make the educational side of the AWP somehow fit to the audience, whether it's IT audience or pure capital projects, whether it's younger generation or it's more experienced people. And then these two pillars, which are new actually, and it's the first time it's happening actually in the industry. The third one is the capital projects, information technology, the CPIT partnership or alliance. And this aims to create a dialogue between capital project professionals and IT professionals to make projects better. So open the capital projects profession to people that are not from a construction background. And then the fourth one is to create a capital project legal partnership or a strategic partnership on a global level. And the idea here is there are certain ways we do contracts for construction projects all over the world, but we know that certain strategies are fit for certain projects and other strategies are not fit. So how do we make this kind of decision? We want to create a standard for that. And so, as I mentioned, I'm not going to get into the details of those, but then I know there are people in the IT sector here, so what does this mean? Basically, what are we trying to achieve through this IT aspect is to answer the question, what is the right technology that would fit and make improvement in the construction sector? So we rely too much on Excel spreadsheets. In a way, as a multidisciplinary engineer, I see myself as somebody that's technology competent. I'm ashamed that in the construction sector we're still relying on Excel spreadsheets and we're trying to update them manually. So what's the right technology for that? And the reason this is important is because the reason we're gathering here today is because we want to exchange information, learn from each other, and then leave something behind. When we leave this industry, what matters most is that the next generation, when they come in and they take over a certain industry, they do much better than we do, right? Now, if we keep relying on basic tools like this in the construction sector, all the information and the experience is lost. I've seen projects, actually one of the factors that make projects fail the most is when the project manager leaves the project in the middle, believe it or not. Because he has so much information about the project, when he leaves there is a huge gap that cannot be filled. So the idea is to somehow create an information technology environment that captures as much as possible of the reality of the project, so that when people leave, of course jobs are important, but when people leave, projects do not fail, that's the idea. So obviously when you implement the right technology, the question to answer is, what is the return on investment on the construction technology? This is one of the major obstacles for research in the construction technology field, is to create something and then make it profitable. It takes years. It's not a business model. It's like Uber, you just need a computer, something you create, people subscribe, and you start making money. The construction industry, it's not like that. You need to develop something, test it. There's a lot of, you're gonna need investment in certain hardware. You're gonna implement that. You're gonna test it, bring it back, improve, and over years you're gonna get some return. So investors, in a way, and this is a challenge, they're more oriented into investing into those business opportunities that bring quick return on investment. I want to give money today, or next month I want to start getting some return back. That's not the case for construction technology. It takes time to get return. And so that's a challenge. And the question to ask through this IT capital project partnership is to see what paths should we take to get a faster return on investment and make it more alluring, for investors to join on board. And so the idea is where to start. One of the first goals is to start through a standard messaging service for project management information. is if I'm in an engineering office in India and I have a part of the scope, and then I'm working with an engineering company office in Houston, and we're communicating with a construction company. In addition to the design that now in the cloud actually you can make the changes and track the changes, but then when we communicate with each other about the status of the information, about the experience, about any issues, about the to-do lists and these kind of things, which is project information, how do we get that exchange, you know, standardized in a way, so that we can do data mining on that. So this basically sums up my presentation. As I mentioned from the beginning, I'm not here to sell you a software or to get you guys, you know, go buy this license. It's gonna make you, you know, the AWP system. It's a way of thinking. If it requires, one of the very first thing it requires is for the people in the companies itself to implement it. You're gonna find a lot of consultants that are gonna say, okay, it's like any other system, we wanna come and implement it. But the truth is, these kind of things, they do happen when the people in the organization themselves get educated and learn how to implement the system, and then they take it from there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any questions? I'm glad to answer them. I hope it was not very different, or I don't know. So, what do you guys? Any questions?
I'd like to just know, there's a construction extension of PMI.
Okay.
Is it something related to AWP, or is it totally different? Do you know that?
So as I mentioned, you know, in those blocks, so that fits into that middle block in a way. So that fits into the middle block of the project management practices. Sorry, just want to get it. Yeah, it fits in here. So it's project management capabilities. It's still not. It does not talk to the governance, the assurance process, the gating system, you know, the metrics. It's not comprehensive, but it's a good start. So if we can take that and then the advanced wood packaging system and then marry them together into a standard, and then in a way actually a certification on AWP is under development to be somehow for construction project the equivalent of the PMP certification. But then again, this is the course of any system that comes in new, right? You create something, you want to make it standard, you want to create training for it, and so on and so forth.
In PMI, we know that in the history, project management originally started from construction, but now I guess it's forgotten in the construction.
It is forgotten now, yeah. Look, people have started managing projects since the pyramids, right? The Egyptians, when they built the pyramids, they had the management system in there, right? And that's what I see. I mean, in the IT sector, of course, and the automation manufacturing sector, so cars and so on, the advantage that they have is that you work in a fixed space, fixed environment. You know, when you put something that's not going to move, when you execute a project, it's not going to move. Now, the opposite side of it, innovation and research projects in IT, for example, you kind of like you don't know where you're going, right? You work on months and then all of a sudden you think, okay, this is not the direction I want to go. I want to go back. So somehow, my feeling is that research projects in IT, the way they're managed, we can learn a lot from that into the construction, because there's a lot of unpredictability in there. And that's the agile system, basically. In a way, there are many aspects of that do match the advanced wood packaging system, and of course I hope this could be married together. Any questions?
Not a question, but
talking about standards, you said if bankers can do it, why can't be in construction? But banks cannot survive unless they interact with the whole world. Whereas construction companies can survive as islands their whole life cycle, I mean, with working with the same suppliers and subcontractors without the need to interact, but also it will be kind of hard to live into standards.
And that's a very good point. So he was mentioning in a way, he said banks, they have to follow this because they cannot survive without it. But construction companies, they can survive. Now the truth is, ultimately, all industries go through the same phases, but then some go slower than others. Now, if we look at the construction industry, years ago, it was when you're a small contractor doing some work in a mining area or in an area where some oil is starting to pick up, or for certain plants in an industrial sector, you could survive. But now, you know, many of those small companies, they just disappeared. And the reason for that is that construction companies are becoming more global. And now we see certain projects actually, you're limited. You know that to execute these projects, let's say the liquefied natural gas projects, you basically have a choice between two companies, one or two companies in the world. Either you work with this one or this one, you know. So with the globalization, it's slower for projects and in the construction sector, but we're going there, we're getting there. With globalization, somehow we need to, in a way, you either join, you know, the course, or you're going to be left behind, basically. Now, I mentioned in the beginning, I said, you know, you look at the country, I just say, tell me how you do your projects, I'll tell you how developed that country is. And the reason for that, and speaking of this, is like anything else, whether for technology, for example, telecom, IT, anything, there are always the leaders in every sector. There are the leaders. So these are the people that eventually they invented the subject or the tool or the technology. They use it for a while, and then in a way, for a business goal, and obviously for a profitability goal, that product reached a certain maturity, then now it has to become a mass production product. We need more and more users to use it to be able to make money. You know, today, if you're a car manufacturer today, if you only make 10 cars a day, you won't survive because the cost is going to be high. You need to make a certain number, otherwise you won't make it. It's economies of scale, basically. So it's the same thing on a larger scale, whether when it comes to protocols, but it just, in a way, it's slower and it's less perceived on industries that really go slow, like the construction industry and so on.
Yeah, banking is IT bound, whereas construction is muscle power.
Now, the thing is, the productivity chart in there is it's really intriguing, because in construction we introduced technology, right? I mean, the engines are there, we do 3D modeling, you know, modularization is there. So now parts of the projects are constructed in a shop, and then you transport them, and then you bring them to the site and try to connect them. And even with all those, there has not been a breakthrough in the productivity. Even with this. So at some point, we really asked ourselves this question. Certainly it has to do with tools and technology, but it has to do with work processes. And you know, guys, in the lean system, it started in Japan, right? The Toyota, right? Now, how did it get to the United States? There is a book called The Machine That Changed the World. So this book is really interesting to it. It's a really interesting read. So this book is basically, it summarizes a study that was done by MIT on a budget, a $5 million budget, over 3 or 4 years. What they did is that they came in, it's a partnership. They said, okay, we're going to go ahead and study Japanese factories, see what they're doing, and then use that, make it a standard, and use it on all car manufacturing so that we bring cars to as many people as possible. Of course, it's because it's good for business, but the truth, that's what it is. It always starts this way. Someone has a certain method, it's good, it's bringing results, people get interest, they want to learn from it, then somehow a formation happens, like a third party, typically somebody neutral, so academics, non-profit, etc. They come in, they document this, they bring it to the industry, people start using it, and we start moving the industry altogether. What happened in the car industry, we want it to happen in the construction industry as well.
There is a very big breakthrough in technology nowadays. You know, 3D printing, and that technology has some applications in construction also.
Yeah.
I believe in near future those applications will be much more in construction industry, and that may be the revolution.
Maybe. So the thing is, you know, when I talk about construction, of course I'm talking about the industrial construction. So if we take the residential sector, for example, it has improved a lot, you know. So especially with the use of building information modeling, BIM. Any people familiar with the BIM system? So the software called Revit, and you know, this kind of. So the building information modeling, BIM, enabled somehow the construction of a site virtually, and then through that you can detect all the clashes, like the piping clashes, the structural clashes, the walls, everything virtually, and then once you generate your 2D designs, they're perfect somehow. So in a way that improved a lot the quality and the, you know, how fluent is the execution for the residential sector mostly. Other sectors use it too, but it has not been as, everybody uses it now, and it's not as it's like a basics, you know. Any other questions? No questions are stupid, so please go ahead and ask any question. You know, when I'm in an audience, I always ask questions. So. Okay, well, thank you so much. Now I have something for the PMI Turkey chapter because first of all, it's a pride to see that this chapter is doing well. It's given this opportunity to increase the awareness on project management, and it's one of the, as I learned today, is one of the most growing chapters throughout PMI all over the world. So I wanted to commemorate this this presentation and then give you this for the Advanced Work Package from the Advanced Work Packaging Institute, and it's basically a best wishes commemoration. You know, good luck everybody, and continue the good work.
For this presentation, we normally give presentation also, but it's a Turkish copy of PMI.
Okay.
I think you don't need that. But what do you?
What is
PMI is a project management body of Norway.
Oh, the PM book. Okay, okay.
And Turkish version.
Okay, Turkish version. Yes, please.
It's a good souvenir.
It's a good souvenir, yeah.
Yok, onu sonradan göndermemiz gerekecek.
We are going to send you, but I suggest some more, because our audience is more IT and communication. What we can, but we have seen the importance of that approach, let's say. If you by somehow send me the presentation, I can try to work it out to the construction companies that we have some members in that. As I said. And if you permit us, when we are ready, we can put that video to the YouTube and we can send you the link. And then our members for the construction companies can watch later.
actually I had a webinar for the PMI a few months ago, and like many people from around the world connected. And so you know, as you can see in those webinars, you know, you see like people from every country saying hello from that area. And I don't know if you guys seen that. So over like 1,000 members come in, and there were a lot of people from Turkey, and in a way, it was a good surprise for me. So.
Okay, we really thank you.
Sure.
Again. And we have a tradition to take a picture.
Of course, yeah.
Everybody should come to here.